So we've been talking for the last few days about the importance of play and playfulness, and we've been slithering around the park on sheets of ice to try not to fall over, talking about this very important subject. So what do you think of the importance of play in human life?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Play is important in dozens and dozens of ways.
Yeah.
I would go as far as to say play is primordial and essential to
Absolutely.
to human existence. Now, the obvious instance of play is the play of children, which children seem to engage in automatically, instinctively. Seem to be hardwired by evolution and to play. Play. Now, what's actually going on there, it strikes me, is that a small child in the act of play is attempting to master the world around them, to find out how it works, to explore the limits of...
It's kind of curiosity, isn't it?
It is, it's curious.
Playful curiosity.
Yeah, I'll come to that. But play is the way in which a child learns, first of all, to walk, to speak, to understand an environment, to understand space-time, to come to understand gravity, to understand social relations, to understand love, to understand friendship, to understand competition, etc., etc. Whole kind of swathes of life mastery over whole swathes of life are acquired by children through play. This tells you a very essential thing about it. Play is a tremendous instrument of cognition.
Yeah.
In other words, a means of acquiring knowledge. Not only acquiring knowledge, but acquiring useful knowledge. Nietzsche, if I can mention Nietzsche, Nietzsche said this interesting thing towards the end of his life. He said, "I know of no other way of prosecuting a great task than that of play." In other words, Nietzsche was saying that his philosophical method was essentially playful. And he is alluding there, I've explored this to some extent, to some depth I think, but he is alluding there to the cognitive knowledge acquiring function of play in children, and he's saying that we can extend that into adult life, into our philosophical inquiries about all manner of things, about value, about where we want to see the human species going in the future, about politics, about metaphysics. In other words, I would say that Nietzsche is saying that in philosophy, engage the imagination.
Yeah.
Be experimental.
Absolutely.
Be experimental. We don't have to be kind of wedded to this paradigm of philosophy as something rather like Euclidean geometry, whereby you have these very austere rational proofs of what it is that you want to demonstrate. He's envisaging something far more artistic. Play. That accounts for the prominent role that the notion of the child plays in Nietzsche's late philosophy, in Zarathustra, for instance, where he sees a kind of an enlightened state of a human being as being like that of a child, but the Nietzschean child is a child who's actually grown up and made all the mistakes and then has returned to a second innocence, has come back to a second innocence, and who lives in the world in a playful state, investigating the world around his or herself, in the same way that a toddler explores the garden or a swimming pool, or the Encyclopedia Britannica. Yeah. So the ramifications for our philosophical culture, and we should take this seriously, because philosophers, however kind of crazy they are, and they are crazy, but philosophers are the legislators of mankind as much as the poets are. And Plato's thoughts are a very large part of the cultural universe that we swim about in. You know,
Yeah.
Aristotle's thoughts and Hegel's thoughts and Marx's thoughts
More
and
than
Freud's
we
thoughts.
know.
More than we know.
Yeah.
Without, I've just been reading E.A. Burt's classic, what's it called? The Metaphysical Foundations of Modern Science. And without, he demonstrates quite convincingly that without the resurrection of Plato's ideas in the medieval period, the science as we know it, experimental science as we know it, would not have developed, because it didn't have the underpinnings and the conceptual framework prior to then in order to develop. It was too stuck in the notion of Aristotelian authority, you know, and that you were allowed to think what the church said you could think.
Yeah.
In other words, that was a society in which one was not encouraged to play.
Yeah, exactly.
One was not encouraged to play in order to serve religious dogma. Religious dogma requires that you get yourself thoroughly grown up.
Yeah.
You know, whereas genuine inquiry, without which I would suggest the human enterprise is going to fail, especially at this juncture. We need to be making some very, very serious, fresh inquiries. But the way to do it is through the method of play.
Yeah.
In other words, experiment, finding out, thinking out of the box, engaging in the whole thing with the joy of play.
Yeah.
This is the thing that will stop us from turning our next revolution into a terror.
Yeah.
Is retaining the joy of the child at play.
Yeah.
And but the child with the second innocence, you know. And we are precisely culturally at that point of second innocence. You know, it's unless you kind of some kind of inbred in the boondocks, you know, you're likely to have a fairly sceptical attitude towards the notion of God, even if you still retain some vestigial faith. You're still probably unlikely to kind of follow the God of Moses, you know, the kind of the nasty bastard with the beard, you know. Nietzsche's announcement of the death of God, I think culturally is pretty well carrying in the West. Now, obviously, in the Islamic world, not. You know, they are in fierce reaction to the death of God, the killing of God that has been carried through in the West. And however you look at it, it's no longer the cultural force that it once was. And this is what Nietzsche meant by a second innocence. We can't take any of this stuff on face value anymore. We are not ready to just believe something because a man in a frock said that we should believe it. We don't go there anymore. We've been educated.
Yeah.
You know,
well, most of us don't hopefully go there anymore. But
I'm
unfortunately,
I'm talking with very, very broad brushstrokes as a culture. We're in the UK, you know. It's
the culture that we live in.
It's a secular culture.
Yeah.
There's still loads of people who go to church. There's still people who are pretty sceptical about all that stuff, who have some kind of vestigial beliefs. But the general cultural setup is for all intents and purposes, less so in the United States, but certainly in Europe, it has Nietzsche said it to us, you know. God is dead and we have killed him.
Yay.
And that, you know, and, but that means this is the meaning of the second innocence. This is the meaning of our new opportunity to play.
Yeah.
We now have a new opportunity to play. The irony is killing, you know, at a juncture in which if we don't get our shit together as a species, we're finished.
Yeah.
I don't need to spell it out, you know, global warming, population 7 billion and rising, rainforests which process the atmosphere disappearing rapidly, fish stocks that are, the whole limits to growth thing. There's no doubt about it. I don't care how you gloss it. This is not shock doctrine or conspiracy theory or panic mongering. We're screwed unless we get our shit together.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, history has contrived to throw us into the state of the second innocence, in which we must we must get the best cognitive methods that we can together in order to sort out where we're at and where we're going.
Mm.
No doubt about that, you know, and this is like a cultural project that is going on, and with obviously with a lot of toing and froing of argument and so on. So, play as a cognitive mode. This is just to summarise all that. Play is a cognitive mode. I'd go so far as to say probably one of the best cognitive modes. You know, it needs amending with other things, but that raw creativity in which we can plug into into a place where we can get fresh ideas, fresh audacious ideas in any field. Play which puts us into that space where Miles Davis was sitting when he was kind of blowing on Bitch's brew, or when Ravi Shankar was sitting when he played Raga Malkuns in 1966, you know, to the nth degree, or where Jackson Pollock sat, or where Picasso was when he was doodling, you know, or where a Zen master is when he bats a question back at a student. That place of spontaneity is the place of play. Mm. It is the place of the second innocence.
Yeah. It's
a place where you come fresh to the world, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to experience, you know, especially in the creative frenzy of art. But it can be used. It can be used if you're trying to write philosophy. It can be used in gardening. It can be used in relationship, and it is a kind of a fresh, childlike openness to things. It's a beautiful thing. It's very, very, very worth. If you like getting high, you're going to like spontaneous play because it's a high.
Yeah.
It's a high. But the beauty is further compounded by the fact that this is probably the only practical means with which we're going to do the blue skies thinking, if you want to call it that, or with we're going to get the really, really, really juicy ideas and concepts and understandings and paradigms with which we'll move out of our current mess. Now, on the level of spirituality, whatever that is, but I think you know what I'm talking about. On the level of spirituality, so that is exactly the same place where we need to tackle our modern obsession with meditation, with spirituality, and with wanting some of whatever it was that's lurking behind the smile of the Buddha. We want some of it, you know. We want some of it. We want some of it. Why is that Zen? Why does that Zen master laugh with such a belly laugh? We want to know, you know. And again, I'm going to put it to you that the way to tackle that is through play. It's through play. It's not through attempting to make yourself into a good little boy, a good little girl, a good little Zen Buddhist,
absolutely.
a good little Catholic.
Yeah.
It's actually abandoning all that stuff. It must proceed from the place of second innocence.
Yeah.
We must to meditate. You need to be the child.
Yeah.
You need to encounter.
And without goal.
Without goal, you say play is goalless, except for the
joy of play.
Except for the joy of the play in the going, and the knowledge that if you kind of abandon yourself to it, you're going to find some shit out. Yeah. You're not quite sure what. It is pure discovery.
Yeah.
And meditation is play. Proper meditation is play. It's pure discovery. It's pure exploration, joyous exploration and discovery. Its field is ourselves, our lived experience, our felt lived experience. You know.
Even if in that experience it's painful and you discover painful things, it's not always joyful as such. But
there's the overarching tone of it is joy. The overarching tone of it is joy. I mean, play can be painful. You play an imaginary game in which you get killed.
Yeah.
You know, or your companion gets killed. If you play properly, you feel all that emotion. It's vivid. Play is vivid. Yeah. Because it fully engages the imagination. Similarly, with one's meditation, it's vivid, but it's filled, instead of being a room full of building blocks and what do kids have? The Barbie dolls and
Meccano
and all that stuff. It's our interiority. It's our
imagination.
It's our felt lived experience. Whatever is in our felt lived experience, whether it's imaginative, perceptual, conceptual, cognitive, doesn't matter. The content isn't at issue. It's just the field of play is our felt lived experience. That is the field of play of meditation and proper spirituality. The advantage of it is, well, it's joyous. Even though you may encounter painful things, you encounter them with joy. You are ready and willing and able to encounter a dark memory, a dark fantasy, your own mortality, some pain of something that's happened to you. You know, whatever. As I say, it's whatever you encounter thoroughly. And it is exactly like play. In fact, it is pure play.
Yeah.
It's not widely recognised in the kind of spiritual fraternity and in our modern spiritual discourses, because the main obsession and concern there seems to be to get human beings to conform to some ideal.
Yeah.
You know, some notion of some man-made notion of moral perfection masquerading as a transcendental desideratum.
Yeah, we're very sick of man-made perceptions of moral perfection. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You know, and this is largely the agenda. Hence, you get the notion of path, because you start from a place where you evaluate your own status and being as that a fallen, crap, sinful being, as someone who is full of flaws, and you hear yogis say this all the time. And when you question them, they can't answer as to what exactly it is that they mean. Yeah. So there you are. You're this piece of shit that's going to become gold 50 years in the future if you get your nose to the grindstone and practice whatever it is that they've decided that you practice. If you think about what is actually going on there, it's certainly not free play, and can't partake in any of the goods that free players can deliver. It's a kind of quite gruesome business of kind of trying to mould yourself, and very often it involves some kind of self-torture. Because since you're crap, you need to be punished as well as trained like a dog.
Yeah.
You know, with reward and punishment and all kinds of like threats and promises to get to this dubious place of so-called moral perfection.
Yeah.
That is the ruling paradigm. And we would be more in line with what's advantageous to the human future if we understood that actually it should be engaged with spirituality, meditation, contemplation, should be engaged with as play, as experiment, as discovery, and in a manner which is exactly analogous to the joyous way in which children come to knowledge of the world. That is what I would want to say about that. Strangely, this is a matter that's recognised in the traditions, the world's meditation traditions. In a few places, in a few corners, it's not like this hasn't been recognised. It's just that the other thing kind of rules mostly. 75% perhaps of what's going down out there now is of the ascetic variety, of the path variety, of the morality.
Goal variety.
A goal-orientated moral version of it. But something like that famous Tantra, Vigyan Bhairava Tantra, there's one verse in there which I absolutely love, you know, and it's my favourite meditation in many ways, and it goes like this. It just says, "Gracious one, play. Let your mind frolic endlessly in the universe." And that's the practice.
Yeah.
That's a practice, and the book is supposedly written by written by Shiva's missus, by Parvati, the Lady of the Mountains, who she herself is enlightened, but she pretends not to be, and she asks Shiva a question in order to get him to spill the beans as to the nature of his own reality and how human beings might partake in it. Because
like
it's
what
pretty
possibly
amazing.
Is happening right now.
Yeah, something like I don't know. And anyway, she says to him, Shiva, my old lover,
Hey, the old lover boy.
Say, come on, what is your reality, and what can we do? And he's there. Oh, but leave me alone. You leave me alone. He's a very interesting character in the chronicles. In the kind of in the mythic texts. Wonderfully strange idea of somebody who's supposed to be a god, because he's like they're giving it boom shanker, all the time, and he's mad on sex, and won't get a haircut, So he then kind of comes out with a list of ways we might proceed, 118 methods of proceeding, and people who like this stuff say every known meditation method is in there. That's the text. So even that is playful. The way the text is imagined to have originated.
Yeah.
Is wonderfully playful, and that I've got a lot of affection for it. I've got no time for this stuff where you've got to kind of put your bollocks in a voice to get anywhere.
I mean, where the hell did they come up with that?
I don't know. I mean, Swami Vivekananda, for instance, which I've just been rereading, who I've kind of read on and off for 50 years, believe it or not, kudos and respect to the guy, but he
still
he feels as though he wants to say that if, for instance, if you're sexually active, you've got no chance here. I mean, he paints the whole picture of what we do in our spiritual practice as something very, very grim, nose to the grindstone, and you've got to actually more or less torture yourself.
Yeah.
And it's sort of all the old kind of like primitive stick and carrot, not nonsense. The way he approaches it. For instance, I mean, he says like, well, if you want to practice Raj Yoga, you must be chaste in thought, word, and deed. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you sit down in the meditation, you do your alternative nostril breathing. You start letting your mind concentrate and settle down. If you do that, and you've had a sexual thought, you will go insane. This is a guy who's been incredibly influential. Maybe he was right, and it explains a lot. But just being serious, it's horribly grim. It's horribly nose to the grindstone. It's all about trying to have power over existence, because that's the way you would become invulnerable from life's propensity to inflict suffering on us.
Yeah.
And the fact of death lurking in the future, perhaps.
Like, we're not going to suffer and die. Yeah.
No
matter what.
Well, the idea is we are going to suffer and die, and our proper reaction to that is to spend our lives becoming invulnerable, by becoming all powerful. That is the agenda that is laying in front of people. And it's obviously a compensatory fantasy for the fact that whatever you fucking do, you're going to suffer and die.
Yeah.
So, over and against that tendency, which is the dominant tendency in spirituality, and in which the death of God and the needs of our current ecological and cultural crisis. Notwithstanding all that old paradigm seems to rule. It seems to rule amongst the modern yogis, say in England, say in America. You read this stuff. You read Yoga Journal. You read what these commentators, and they're very articulate and educated and clever people, but they are nevertheless closet Christians, and that they are. I mean, I'm generalising like mad here, but I could probably pick something out and show you how this is, And that the old kind of religion of guilt, the religion of superego, has not been supplanted by so-called new spiritualities and new religions, or the importation of cultural forms from the east to the west and vice versa, and that whole kind of modern mishmash of practices and ideas. Still largely caught in the loop of reward, punishment, guilt. Over and against that, I want to be saying, well, spirituality, gracious one, play.
Yeah.
Gracious one, play.
Sounds good to me.